So this will be a tough session, very tough session. So you have to be prepared. And because, of course, here is the encountering of very different areas, cultures, and perspectives in a one session. Because we have Australia, India, Turkey, and Canada, because Vincent Shen sent also a paper, and Africa. So
all continents.
Almost everywhere. But we will start with the farthest place and with the most daring, interesting, exotic for us as Europeans, but very close to us at the same time, I think. Professor John Ozolins from Australian Catholic University will present a paper on identity, diversity, and the modern world. Please.
Well, the biggest challenge for me, I think, is to finish this in 20 minutes. It's quite a long paper, but I have cut it down, so I'm hoping that the bits that I leave out doesn't mean it becomes completely incoherent. So we shall see. So basically I want to talk about a couple of problems, mainly the problem of what constitutes national identity, what constitutes cultural identity, what's the difference between the two, and what problems this gives rise to. One of the aspects of the modern world has been the communication revolution, which seemed the possibility, as we have here, of the encounter of different people from different places in the world, a variety of faiths, cultures, and so on. And that's a richness which enables us to perhaps address some of the common human questions. It's certainly true that the way in which we see the world is partially understood in terms of language, but that's not all, despite the fact that someone like Wittgenstein says that the role of language is vital in the way in which we form the world in which we inhabit. The other part of it, which Gadamer also points out, that there is also a cultural tradition against which we must also understand the kinds of world we live in. And both of these views, the view that language forms our world and culture as forming the world, are both the ways in which we understand the world. So it's not just a matter of communicating via language, that when we speak to someone in a language not our own, that we are speaking in a way in which they will understand what we're saying. The cultural part is going to be important too. So the significance here is also of embodiment, which has been mentioned before. So what we find with globalisation is that there are some convergences, of course. There is a rise of mass culture, which Adorno mentioned way back in the 1950s. And there is that kind of ubiquitous acceptance of the importance of the market economy. Now, in one sense, in the 90s, we ended up with the idea, having seen communism collapse, that nevertheless, the coming battle, according to Huntington, wasn't between ideologies, but between civilizations, religions, and cultures. I don't think he's been proved right about this. So the idea of the clash of civilizations is problematic, it seems to me, is not entirely right. In fact, there are positives to be seen in that tension that's created between different cultural perspectives. The good part of that is that it enables differing conceptions of what it means to be a human person to be shared, and these will affect very concretely our conceptions of who we are as persons. So it need not be a conflict to be feared. civilisations, that there are ways in which we can learn from different cultures, values and traditions, particularly on questions such as conceptions of God, of human nature, of human values. In being open to different outlooks, there's much to be learned about ourselves and our values. So if we're Christian or Muslim, in considering a Jewish conception of God, we become aware of common origins, of having beliefs shaped by being Abrahamic faiths. But we are also aware of profound differences. It does mean that with the commonalities, monotheists can stand on common ground. And it's through these differing discussions of these differences in our identities as adherents to different faiths that we begin to understand ourselves much better. And through that interaction, we become much clearer about who we are as human persons. Now, despite that rather positive introduction, it seems to me that there are issues in understanding another culture. It's not easy because we nearly always stand within our own culture. And that means that our own prejudices, ideologies, self-interest will act to blind us to what is in the other. McIntyre, primarily addressing rival philosophical traditions inquiry, he says debates between two traditions are inevitably inconclusive because each will make judgments about the other from its own standpoint, and moreover, one will always regard the other as irrefutably wrong. So there are issues. So not only do we have to investigate the philosophical and theological foundations that shape our own cultures and traditions, but also to try to stand in the place of the other as far as that's possible, and see ourselves from another perspective. And that's not too easy because our diversities of the language, culture and our own traditions are significant barriers to us being able to stand in the place of the other. Now, despite those difficulties, it seems to me that we are not irremediably locked into our ways of thinking. Cultures, languages and traditions are not museum pieces, forever fixing our perspectives. So from our own point of view, our own views are fluid. They're always changing and constant ferment. Each generation has to interpret traditions and cultures anew. Language also changes under the influence of new experiences, encounters with people from other languages and cultures, new discoveries and changing patterns of life. New words come into language, old words get new meanings, and so on. New experiences do result in fresh ideas, which are expressed in novel words, sometimes borrowed from other languages and cultures. No, so the fact that there are large divergences amongst the many different people and cultures of the world does not imply complete incommensurability and untranslatability of ideas between and among them. So here I take exception to McIntyre's view that traditions kind of stand almost completely apart and they're incommensurable. I don't think that's right. And I suspect in his later work, in fact in his most recent work from maybe 15 years ago, he has moved a little bit away from that tight incommensurability that he has in his earlier work. So, and the reason I say this is that when you're travelling in another country, when you don't speak the language, it's still possible to make yourself understood. Because there are commonalities. We all need to eat, we all need to drink, and we can make people aware by signs and gestures of our needs to others. Okay, they're very limited ways of understanding, and of course it could be misunderstood. They might think, you know, when you're going like this, you're threatening them in some kind of way, and not really asking them, I need to leave. But it would not be possible if we didn't share some common experiences and so have a way of communicating. So empirically, languages and cultures are not completely incommensurable, nor are ideas within them completely untranslatable. So being hungry, thirsty, hot or cold, the need for shelter, these are all basic needs, and all human beings need them. And all human beings also need, apart from those kind of basic physical kinds of things, but we also need to be loved, to feel loved, to be comforted in our grief, and we need to be feeling dignified in the work that we can do. So we need an environment where we can appreciate beauty and joy in the company of others, and there's lots more to be said about that as well. And these are just common basic needs that human beings share, and we can expect to find descriptions of these in different languages which we can recognise as referring to those basic needs. So it seems to me it's a matter of empirical evidence that this is the case, and that if it is, as I'm arguing it is, then the possibility of communication exists. So if we can make ourselves understood in at least a rudimentary way, it does seem to be the case that basic communication is possible and incommensurability ruled out. Actions by people in other cultures are intelligible to us. Before the communication age, individual identity was shaped by the language, culture and traditions of the village to which individuals belonged. Perspectives and values reflected that community in which people lived their lives, and the encounters with strangers from different parts of the country, let alone the world, were limited. Lacking experience of other cultures and traditions, people encountering strangers had difficulty in understanding them, perhaps regarding their custom as exotic and commensurable. Globalisation, in terms of its positive encounter, has made this much more amenable for us to encounter these diverse cultures from other places. The downside of that is that it's also brought with it the threat of cultural colonisation, in which a dominant culture overpowers an indigenous minority culture. And I need to kind of elaborate on that, but I think you know what we're talking about, like the ubiquitous presence of McDonald's and Coca-Cola and the like, virtually in every country in the world, which might feel very comfortable if you come from the United States, for those of us who perhaps are going somewhere to find something exotic and different and wanting to share the indigenous culture, and then finding, oh no, they've got a McDonald's. It is perhaps a little disappointing, but you get the idea that there are pluses and minuses in this. Now, the other thing that's perhaps important to talk about is also national identity. What do we mean by national identity? We have to look at the idea of cultural identity or individual identity, but there's also the notion of national identities. And this is not exactly easy to untangle. It's not simply, national identity is not simply the sum of all the individual identities. For example, Locke says a commonwealth is any form of independent community. According to Hume, in his discussion of the soul, the continual ebb and flow of perceptions in the human mind may be compared to a commonwealth in which individuals are united through subordination to government and laws, and who give rise to new individuals to replace them, so that there's incessant change of the parts of the commonwealth. But nevertheless, it's the same commonwealth. So when we think about Romania, for example, where we are today, what is Romania? What is Romania? Is it the sum of all the people who are Romanian? Of course, some of us are here, but we're not Romanian, so we don't contribute to what is Romania. So there is this abstract idea, there is something which embodies what it is to be Romanian. So someone or other knows what that means, but it's a very slippery idea. So anyway, the idea that both Hume and Locke were talking about, this ebb and flow of people dying, people living, all of them somehow contributing to this nebulous idea of the nation state. Now, and nations are not just identified when you think about it. So, well, Romania, we've got this boundary. So we step over, I don't know how many kilometres, we're in Moldova. So that's not Romania. Why isn't it Romania? Is there a line that says, well, what if I stand on either side of that border? I'm half Romanian, half Moldova. What's that mean? So certainly we delineate, territory. It's one way of doing it, but it's not just that. And it's a very complex task. Is it that it's a matter of ethnicity? That we know in nation states that various ethnic groups can be all kind of fighting each other. Certainly we want to talk about all of the common experiences of somehow forming that nation. A shared language. Here we talk about, well, a shared language is certainly going to bind us in some kind of way. If I can talk to somebody in a language next door, there's a commonality here. If they speak something completely different, I can't talk to him. I was going to ask for a cup of sugar, but I don't know them. I can't speak to that person. So, the other kinds of things are experiences, common triumphs. You know, Romania wins the World Cup, they're playing the World Cup, but supposing they did, Romania would be very happy about that. So we share in our common triumphs, and we also sorrow in the common things that are disasters and so on. They all form us, and our history forms us in certain kinds of way. Things that bind a disparate group will be external threats. And that's one explanation of how a modern state might emerge. So in one sense, the nation or the national identity is formed by the individuals that form part of it. They're not mutually exclusive and interrelated. So when somebody says, I'm French or Italian, Australian, or something like that, then what does that actually mean? It's not necessarily ethnicity, because in countries that are multicultural, people come from everywhere. A Chinese Australian can be ethnically Chinese, but an Australian citizen and identify himself as Australian. Or he could identify himself as Chinese, but be an Australian citizen. So the more complex things are people who are, for instance, of mixed or dual citizenship, who could belong to more than one ethnic group. Someone with mixed ethnic parentage has several possible ethnic allegiances. A woman, for example, could be born in the United States to Latin American parents from two different countries, and marry a man from a European country, resulting in the possibility of possibly having 4 different citizenships. I actually know someone who does have that. That's why I use this example. So, what's national identity? So, you might think this is not a particularly interesting idea, but in fact, just today in the Australian High Court, there was a challenge made. A number of members of the Australian Parliament, the federal parliament, discovered that they had dual citizenship. Having dual citizenship disqualifies you from sitting in the Australian Parliament. You can only have one citizenship, which is strange because over 60% of people in Australia have either one or more parents born overseas or themselves were born overseas. But interestingly, in the Constitution, strictly speaking, it's now been declared that of the 7 who were challenged in relation to this, 5 of them have been declared ineligible to sit in Parliament because, despite not knowing in some, certainly in the case of our Deputy Prime Minister, who was born in Australia, so had Australian citizenship, but his father happened to be from New Zealand, which automatically gave him New Zealand citizenship. So somehow his identity as an Australian and the eligibility to sit in Parliament is suddenly voided. He cannot sit in Parliament, he has to resign. Now, he's now going to stand again because now that he's rejected his New Zealand citizenship, you can see how some of this legalese is very complicated, and it's a controversy that and I'll talk some more about that in private if anybody wants to know about this, but you can see here that you can find yourself being given a kind of label as a certain kind of citizen or a national identity that you didn't even realise you had. The same applies in other situations. I'm thinking of Russians who live in other countries apart from Russia. The Russian parliament apparently has declared that if you're an ethnic Russian living in another country, you do have Russian citizenship, irrespective of whether you want it or not. So What I'm saying here, national identity, it seems to have can be considered in a very fluid kind of way, as having two parts. One, which is a kind of political identity, where somebody says, well, you were born in this country, so you must be a citizen of our country. Or, you weren't born in our country, but your parents come from our country, so you're a citizen of our country. Which is interesting. So the point is that there's a political element to all of this. The second part is the cultural and ethnic identity that you have. And if you understand the language of another country and to which you belong culturally and ethnically, then you also carry another kind of identity, and that's a cultural identity. Now, I don't have time, I don't think, to say terribly much about that, so I won't say anything very much, but the point I'm making is that a cultural identity is something different to either a kind of individual identity, although it's part of an individual identity. It's another way of thinking about what I am culturally. What am I culturally? I can say politically, yes, I'm a member of this country, and yes, I've rejected any other country's claim on me as a citizen of that country, but then in that country itself, what am I recognised as? What am I? You know, if I'm a Russian Jew, am I a Jew first or am I a Russian first? And this is an interesting problem. And in my development of this idea, I actually use the example of Isaac Babel, who was the first writer, Jewish writer, to actually write in Russian. And he was executed by Stalin in 1941. He was born in Odessa and grew up in Odessa at the time when Odessa was a city which had a huge cultural kind of energy about it, which accepted a kind of, if you like, a kind of cosmopolitanism that was in Odessa around about the turn of the last century, the 1900s, through about to the early 20s when Stalin took power and basically the dead hand of Bolshevism kind of put paid to all of that intense ferment. So what was he? Was he a Russian Jew, or was he a Jewish Russian? What did it mean? What did it mean to be himself? And if you, in his writings, you can see there are all kinds of Jewish mannerisms. He writes in Russian.